I mean, as an artist, like I literally put music out there and YouTube videos out there for like looking for validation from other people. I don't need that from my personal life. Like there's gotta be a limit to how much my life is dependent on other people's thoughts.
Yeah, that's fair.
Welcome. You are entering a strange realm. A realm of what ifs. What if movies, television shows, and video games were better, worse, bizarrer, or downright different? What might they look like? Find out on today's episode of CineCasters.
Hello, and welcome to CineCasters, the show where we watch movies and we analyze them, deconstruct them, and talk about the ways in which they're working and try to figure out alternative ways we could imagine these movies to express the themes and the characters in ways that really just appeal to us.
Really, it's just about us. It's a narcissistic, narcissistic format.
Yeah. I'm Nate Draper, and I'm joined as always by the Janglez.
Yo, what's up? Welcome to the narcissistic format of the CineCasters.
Super pretentious, movie review show, but not review show.
Not really review, mostly just like, what would you do different if someone gave you this script? How would you make it, again, not better, just different, yeah.
Yeah, it's a thought experiment. It's the like,
it's a writing
we got tired of, yeah, there you go. We got tired of people going, oh, this movie sucks, and just shitting on movies, and we thought, oh, it'd be more interesting if we just thought, well, how would you do with that?
I think that's a much more interesting question.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's easy to say, oh, this is garbage, but then to go, well, why? And well, how could it have been better is a far more interesting and
more fun,
and
really.
You have to think about it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
More involved. And this week we are doing Logan's Run.
Yeah.
From 1976, I believe.
Yeah. So here's the weird thing. I sort of had this movie had been on my radar, but of course, one of the main things about Logan's Run is that when you turn 30, so the main premise is when you turn 30, you have to like forfeit your life and die. And then you and the idea is that our main character Logan is a Sandman. He runs after people who try to run out of the city and escape once they turn 30. And that hit close to home because tomorrow I turn 30.
I was going to say, we were actually just one day off. We were originally going to record this on your 30th birthday.
My 30th
completely
birthday.
By chance. And it didn't occur to me until I was watching
I know.
it.
I was like, oh, shit. This is close to home.
Wow. This is like, we timed that perfectly. Like completely coincidentally. But yes. Okay. Did you get any...
I did not get any existential dread from this movie in terms of like, oh, I'm turning 30. I've got plenty of existential dread in other parts of my life. So,
yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, not from this
I don't
movie.
Have any. Yeah, I don't personally have any dread about turning 30.
No, neither did I.
I'm kind of like, I'm like, no. I mean, I think all the interesting art is being done by people kind of in their 30s
as you get
and 40s.
older, I think the philosophy and art. If you're in mathematics or doing chess, then you got to be young. Huh? Otherwise, you're. But if you're doing anything else,
or in like a boy band,
so. But I'm really, really interested in. This movie's been on my radar for a long time, and we did Zardoz 2 summers ago, and I'm very excited to add.
Yes.
I was very excited to watch this one and add this one to the list. And what I got from this movie was that it's sort of really high concept with like it wants to have these really cerebral ideas about utopias and dystopias, but. All I got was that the story was kind of boring, but the aesthetics are like universal. Like everyone has referenced this film in some way. I didn't realize it was so ubiquitous.
It seems that way. I'm curious though. Like, what were some things that you picked up that way that you felt like you'd seen referenced?
So the fashion, like, it's also because I also watch like really, really like. nerdy TV shows, but like the fashion often gets referenced in like episodes of Community and stuff like that, and Rick and Morty. Like clearly they're fans of this movie because I was watching and I was like, oh, this is clearly like I didn't realize where that future aesthetic comes from, especially in the clothing. I was like, oh, that's this movie. They always want to wear like these vaguely Roman togas where everyone's legs are ridiculously bare and the shorts go all the way up to your butt. I mean, it was also the 70s, so that's just what fashion was. But
I always wondered how much of that was just like, that was just sort of a general aesthetic of movies, campy movies from the 70s. But yeah, I do think it's certainly a recognizable movie.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
like, and the colors and the color coordination, like, oh, I'm a green 6, I'm a red 6, like these are your colors, and this is how that how they structure their community based on how old you are. And I did understand the idea, like, everyone's sort of fine until you turn 30. Like, once it's you, then it becomes like, oh shit, I'm the one who has to die now, and now I don't agree with society. I think that would have been more interesting to explore, like if Logan actually was a Sandman for his entire life, and then all of a sudden he actually turned 30 instead of having his clock like accelerated. Instead, he was like, he actually turned 30 and was like, oh shit, now it's me. It's different when it was everyone else. Now it's me. I thought I was special. Because I think there's more like human pride and hubris in that kind of story. Because in this one, he's sort of like, yes, I'm going to go catch these people who look for sanctuary. I'm going to go find these runners. And then halfway through, we never really see it, but halfway through, he's sort of like, yeah, now I'm actually looking for sanctuary. And there was no like turn as a character. Do you know what I mean? There should be a turn there where he goes, oh, I actually want this freedom. Because I was sort of half expecting him at the end to just be like, fuck it, and kill Jessica or whatever, because he'd been waiting for so long to like, there was never that key moment where he changed perspective. So I was always waiting for him to be like, yep, nope, I actually am betraying Jessica, because it wasn't there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I felt that way about so many things in the movie, that there was kind of an introspection that was lacking. They just kind of go from one event to the other. Like, the plot happens and the characters just happen to be there and the camera just happened to be rolling when it happened.
Yeah, because there's some really cool
really seem to
parts to this movie. Like, I loved the miniatures. Everything about the miniatures was awesome. Like, I know it looks hokey, but I kind of loved it. Like, I was like, yo, how come we don't do sci-fi with miniatures anymore? It was awesome.
I did too. I agree. Because the reason I was thinking, like, I was looking at it and going like, okay, I know it's a miniature and I know it's hokey. Why isn't it? Why is it so hokey? And it's because the depth of field is so shallow.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if you're like to actually take a drone out, let's say, and do an overhead shot of a neighborhood, you'd see everything in focus, right? But in this, like, all the trees and everything is out of focus, which gives away the fact that this is a tiny little miniature and they didn't have the right lens to film it.
But I still love it.
I did too. There was something about the camp and the like cheesy sci-fi sound effects and the synthesizers.
I loved the soundtrack. Oh my god, I loved it so too. Good.
It was so over the top and so overstated, but I loved it too. I thought it was amazing.
Oh, it's like, even like as they're traveling from one part of the city to the other, there's like, it's like, oh my god, it's so dumb. It's like, in the future, music will be made by computers, and you're not wrong, Mr. Announcer from the 70s. Music is made by computers. It just doesn't sound like that.
No, exactly.
It doesn't sound like beep boop beep boop. Like,
or like I think my other favorite thing was at the end when he's sitting in the chair and goes, "There is no sanctuary. There is no sanctuary," and then the computer explodes.
Does not compute.
Yeah. I think what I did think was really iconic, and this movie had going for it, was every time the Sandman. First of all, I love the name Sandman. I wish they'd done more with that, because like I figured that the idea was like they're sending people off to sleep.
Yeah,
and I was like, that's clever. Why aren't we doing more with that? Like, let's talk about
I was waiting for that too. Yeah.
But what I did like is whenever the Sandman finds someone, before they like shoot them, they like give them the chance to surrender, and they always yell out like, "Runner!" in order to like give them a chance. So I'm thinking of like, well, basically Francis and Logan do it, but anytime they come across a runner, they always yell out like, "Runner!" I don't know if it's like, I don't know. I thought that was iconic. It kind of reminded me of the scene from the Warriors when they're like, "Warriors,
right?
Come out to play." Like, it just seemed like when they yelled "runner," I was like, that feels very like this movie. Like it could have been very quotable from this movie, like runner, because everybody does it.
Yeah. Well, you know what was interesting too about this movie is it made me think that in particular made me think of Blade Runner. And there is actually some natural crossover to some extent between this and Blade Runner. And Blade Runner, you have a guy who's a hired killer, and he starts reevaluating what he's doing through the process of trying to solve this one mystery. And it's the same thing in this as well, where it's a guy who goes out and he kills people for a living. And now, because of this one assignment he's been given, he has to reevaluate.
But again, we never get that
entire
turn.
Life. Yeah, exactly. And another place where I felt like we didn't get that turn either was the love story.
The love story was dumb. She's like, no, I don't want to have sex with you because reasons. And I was like, okay, like I'm fine with that. Body autonomy is important. But then like later on, she's like, but now I do want to have sex with you. And to me, the entire point of that was just so that they could keep her virtuous.
I don't know. I thought the part that I was really questioning was the part halfway, and it was about halfway through the movie where she was like, "It doesn't matter so long as I'm with you."
Yeah.
And I went, "Where did that come from?" That was
this is Jupiter ascending all over again.
Anything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like this was not brought on by anything. This was, again, it's a clear instance of the plot is happening and the characters happen to be there while it's happening.
The problem that I have with Jessica, and I don't really think I fixed this in my story, but the problem that I have with Jessica is she's sort of his means to get into the people who are trying to find sanctuary. But then after that, he's sort of like, you need to stay here and be safe, Jessica. And I was like, yeah, you're not really necessary for the plot anymore. And then she's like, no, I'm going with you. And I was like, what's your attachment to Logan? Why would you do this? What's your reason for being here? You haven't given me any story motivation of what you want beyond like Sanctuary, but like, great, cool. What does Sanctuary offer you as a person, as a character? Literally all you are as a character is a object of desire for Logan.
Yeah. And just to help him meet the people to help him get out of the dome or whatever it's called.
Well, in that instance, she like has a purpose for the plot and a purpose beyond her womanliness, her looked atness, if we want to talk about Laura Mulvey, and the male gaze. She has a meaning beyond her looked atness, but it's basically just now she's a plot utility, a tool for him to get to the next point in the plot, or from the character's point of view, for him to get to his object of desire, which is closer to Sanctuary. But after that, she simply just becomes an object of sex.
Yeah, and she doesn't.
I actually,
she doesn't do anything.
I actually have
unfortunately.
I actually have more of a problem with it later in the movie than I do earlier in the movie. Because earlier in the movie, he's sort of going through future Tinder, where he like is scrolling through, and like she shows up, and he's like, "Yeah, I like this one," and she's like, "I like this one too." And so there's at least some semblance of like they were in the circuit. She calls it the circuit. They were in the circuit because they were trying to meet up so they could have sex, recreational sex. And then she decides no, and he respects her. Like that's a great scene of body autonomy and consent. Like I was like, this is dope. This is great. And they talk about maybe she's into women. Like clearly they're trying to show that this future utopia city is more progressive than at least some places in the world.
At least for the 70s.
Yeah, at least for the 70s, especially in the 70s. So like that was a great scene in terms of like consent, body autonomy, and the fact that she thought she wanted to have sex, but then she was like, no, I changed my mind. I actually am just sad because I lost my friend. And I was like, yeah, maybe that a lot of people look for companionship when they're sad and then decide they don't want to sex. Great. And then later on, it's sort of just like, you have no character and you're literally here so that Logan can have pretty women.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's irritating because I mean, throughout the whole thing, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the depiction of sex and consent at the beginning is a replacement for her character. It's not. It's just a good depiction of consent and sex positive feminism. It doesn't. She still has no character at that point or later. It's just later on she also is just an object of desire.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately where this movie fails is none of the characters have any character really. Even Logan's, he's kind of just a, what were we talking about last week with Jupiter Ascending? This generic character that becomes this vehicle for the audience to sort of follow
the same
through
way
the
Jupiter
world.
was, that hero with 1,000 faces, literally.
Yeah, exactly. And part of it's, I think, yeah, because with Logan, you never get the sense that he's like, okay, something happens and he reacts to it because there needs to be a reaction shot. It's fulfilling these obligatory requirements for a movie. Yeah. But the sort of the emotional depth that what those things are really there, what they're meant to communicate, isn't there. So, for example, when he first discovers that people don't regenerating, coming back to life or whatever, renewal. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. He has the face, he has the look, he has the like, oh, okay. Like they have the shot of him looking bothered by it, but then there's never any moment where you get the sense that he's really wrestling with that he's really trying to make sense of that this is now actually going to shatter the way he understands the world. Or like when they leave the dome, there's never a moment where he goes like, wow, everything I've been told is a lie. No, they just sort of keep trucking along, and then they just kind of things, like I said, the plot happens and the characters are there and they just sort of happen to be in the plot when it happens.
Yeah. It's there's no... Exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. There's the only character that I think really actually has like an arc of any kind, and it's not a good one, is Francis.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say he's probably the only one, because I can't think.
With some semblance of an arc in order to like move forward. And I actually think that this movie would be more interesting if it was from Francis's point of view.
You know, it's interesting. I thought of doing that for my pitch. I didn't, but it's interesting that you say that too. Yeah.
Because all of a sudden you see this, like your best friend or your partner as a Sandman is now like going off the rails. He's now the runner. And you're like, well, I thought I knew him. And then as he goes through, and then you still would need a turn, because in the end, Francis dies. And I feel like his death either has to be meaningful, or he has to come to the conclusion that when he sees Logan find sanctuary or whatever, that he has to be like, oh no, this is something I want too. There has to be a turn where he either commits and kills Logan, or he and like loses that loyalty to his friend, or he realizes that he actually wants this freedom and sanctuary the same way. Like I said, I feel like this movie is missing an arc of any kind, a turn in character, especially from Logan. But I think Francis is a much more interesting character if the movie follows him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think, because it's interesting, because one of the things I found in writing my pitch, I didn't change a lot, really, because I think a lot of it's one of those cases of there's a lot of things. It's really hard to identify what's not working versus what is working, because it seems like it's this really fine line between some of those ideas are there and they're very interesting. Like, for example, the one thing that I thought was very interesting was he's now being told, he is now given a mission to do something that goes against everything that he's been told to do, and now he's effectively forced into doing this thing that is then going to be the thing that then forces him to question everything that he's been led to do up to that point. And so it's to me, it was a very interesting idea of sort of being sat down in a chair and being given a mission that's now going to undermine everything. Yeah. And I thought that was interesting, but it doesn't work because all of the implications from that, all the emotional and mental implications for an individual who would go through that experience aren't really explored at all.
But I do think that's a great turning point for Logan as a character when he sits down in the chair, especially because like he's told that he's going to run. That's his mission. He's going to be a runner, but also they force his hand through manipulation. Yeah, they move his clock forward, and he even says like, "Am I gonna get that time back after I come back and do the mission?" And the answer is he doesn't get an answer, but really it's no, he's not. So they force his hand through manipulation, and it's almost like it would be interesting if the idea was, they're trying to give him this mission so that he can solve this crisis for them or whatever, this problem of where the runners go. But in doing so, they've accidentally created the perfect and ideal runner, a Sandman who doesn't want to be there anymore, and it has to be believable. So even though he's on a secret mission, nobody else knows about it, meaning that he's the perfect runner.
Yeah, exactly.
And like exploring that idea where he comes to grips with like, well, hang on a second, like I'm doing this for the city, for this amorphous, ephemeral machine that is wherever, godlike machine that runs the city. And I'm doing it for them, but what's in it for me? I'm not going to get anything back. I literally lost 4 years of my life just so I could find the runners. I'm now the perfect runner. I have combat skill. I have, to me,
exactly.
To me, this movie doesn't suffer really from a lack of ideas. There's a lot of ideas in here, and it doesn't suffer from a lack of world building either. There's this really interesting world, and of course they do the whole Planet of the Apes thing where at the end it's like it's Abraham Lincoln on the right, which is fine.
I love how much it's like, oh, the ruins of this once
world,
great civilization, the United States of America. And it's like we have to show.
I actually don't think it did that as well as Planet of the Apes. I think in Planet of the Apes, it's such a big reveal. Like, oh man,
oh, the one in Planet of the Apes is iconic,
it's
right?
So good.
You blew it up. You blew it up. Damn you all the hell.
Exactly, and it's so in this one it was just sort of like, oh, that's neat. You know what I mean? Like,
oh look, it's Abraham Lincoln. Oh look, it's the Washington Monument.
Like,
wow, it's like sightseeing.
Yeah, it's like sightseeing in the future,
overgrown Washington D.C.
Yeah. Whereas, what really I think this movie suffers from is it doesn't have a real character like to follow or anything like that. This is a movie where 100%, if somebody turned to me and said, "Hey, we're going to do a Logan's Run remake and we're going to do it as a TV show, the way that they've been doing like recent science fictions like Total Recall or 12 Monkeys."
Oh yeah,
And they've been doing like these sort of long
Limitless.
These like longer episodic science fictions, and I was like, yo, this is a movie that could seriously benefit from that, because there are so many cool ideas, there are so many ways you could go, and the world is really, really neat. You could even keep some of the cheesy campiness, but like this movie would look so good with just a little bit of budget, and I'm like, there is some really interesting ideas here. This should be a TV show. Let's follow a couple of characters. That would be a TV show I would be excited to watch.
I would totally do it too.
Yeah,
same with me. I actually looked it up. There actually were multiple attempts to remake it.
Yeah, I've heard.
And it never happened. Because I was thinking the same thing. I went, okay, it's really a stylistic thing where this movie falls apart. And by that I mean it's in the execution, and specifically it's just how they chose to tell the story. It's clear, like, to me, watching it, there was, it's more about the set pieces and the plot and the things that happen, and there wasn't really as much attention paid to the actual characters and at least how it comes across in the final film.
Yeah.
The thing that really should drive you through the story is what's not there. But if you were to just take this same kind of structure, that same world, tweak the story and present it to a modern audience. And I was just thinking, if you took an aesthetic similar to something like Blade Runner 2049 or a more recent Fahrenheit 451, I think there would be an audience for it.
I don't even know if I would change the aesthetic, because I definitely would update it for modern times, but I like this sort of like weird fashion sense living in the city, the way they like move around on like these tube train things. Like, I think that's really, really cool. I just want to update the budget. But the thing that really excites me about this idea of doing it as a TV show is there's a couple points in here where I think it would be interesting to use different characters to explore different parts. So when they go to Cathedral, it's like this broken down part of the city. What the fuck happened there? Why are there a bunch of young people running around? They do that in the movie, and it's not really for anything other than to find a runner.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, yo, you need to have one character exploring what a runner is and Sanctuary. You need to have another character figuring out what the fuck is going on with the Cubs, the young people out there. There's whatever happened with Box. That entire segment is entirely useless.
Yeah,
but it's really interesting. It's like,
too. Yeah,
we need these kinds of, like, a couple different characters, some more complex storylines that run through the city. They never really do anything with the fact that the carousel, the renewal like ceremony, is actually a lie. We need to have that be uncovered and have like 4 or 5 characters that are all interconnected somehow at the beginning and all spread out as like one of them becomes a runner, the other one's chasing them. You know, one of them's trying to figure out what's going on. The world is big enough. There's enough ideas in this film, and with a good set of writers, you give me 24 episodes or 12 episodes at 44 minutes, and that's a movie that I would watch. Like even a first,
totally.
And you don't even need we don't even need a second season necessarily, but that's a
show one-off miniseries.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah. No, the thing when I say updated aesthetic, I mean you get like Hans Zimmer with the big synthesizer system, and just say like, "Go to town, man."
Yeah. Well, it's Hans Zimmer, so
yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Soundtrack for Blade Runner.
That's so good. I would be excited for that. Somebody call me up and be like, "Hey, Nate and Janglez, please make a Logan's Run remake." Yes.
Maybe we should just read the book and just buy the rights ourselves.
Buy the rights
and just be like, yeah, sure, okay, we did it. Now you gotta pay us. Someone probably, it'd be interesting to see who has the rights to it, because I'm sure somebody does.
Oh yeah, for certain. It's probably one of the studios too.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's probably like Netflix or Amazon, but their stock dropped. So
I was thinking more like Warner Bros. Or Universal. Actually, I think it's MGM. Yeah, probably. MGM. It's probably Metro Goldwyn Mayer, because that's who made the movie. So.
Oh, there you go. There you
go. Any notes or other things you want to go over before we move on to pitches?
Let's see. The one thing I felt like the whole idea of, only living to 30, I thought that's a great idea for a story. And I felt like that if that's going to be the kind of the leading concept for this world, some of the absurdity and humor around that should be played up a bit more. Because it's really like, if you think about it, that's kind of a funny
strange
idea.
Yeah,
like,
why 30? Why?
Your life ends at 30. It's something that, I'm sure that a lot of people in their early 20s have been like, "Oh wow, 30, that just seems so old. I can't imagine
old.
Being 30.
Yeah, I work with a lot of young people and they think I'm super old, so I totally understand that. I actually came from that idea. I don't think you're wrong, but I came from that idea from the other angle, because in the entire movie the premise is around the idea that you're 30 years old is when you die, but the movie never explains why. What's the purpose of this 30-year-old thing? If it's for comedic sake, like you're talking about the absurdity, like, oh, you're 30, you're so old, because anyone who's over 30 is going to be like, not really. Like, I turned 30 tomorrow, and sure, it feels old, but like, I watched Tick Tick Boom late last year, and I forced my mom to watch it because I was like, this is what it feels like to be an artist. And my mom turns back to me and she's like, I liked the movie, it was fun, the music was good, but it's just sort of 30-year-old angst. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like, she's also, twice my age, so.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just 30-year-old angst because she's been there, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think there is some absurdity, but I really wanted to know, what the fuck? Why 30? This movie doesn't ever answer that question. Mm-hmm. Or what the machine is that gives them all orders. Like, how does that system of government work?
Well, yeah, exactly. Outside Sanctuary, you have the ruins of America. What happened?
Yeah, what happened?
They find a book.
Famine, the idea of the new you, like the new you facility. Like, you can just get a new face. Like, do you know how much ideas you could do with that? Like, I mean, you'd have to change actors, but like, fine. Like, there's some wicked, crazy ideas you can do with like face change and youth technology. Like, that's clever stuff. So
yeah, exactly. There's so much interesting in terms of like science fiction tropes that you can explore and really explore what the implications of those are. There's so much there.
Yeah.
And you're right. It almost seems like for this movie they tried to just stuff it all in.
Yeah.
And hoping that it would, sustain itself.
Yeah.
But there was no thread that held it all together.
But I mean, I really did like a lot of the things this movie was trying to say. I do think there was a lot of like weird pseudo naked men and women for some reason. Almost.
Oh, we should take our clothes off.
We should just take our clothes off so we don't freeze. Now that's actually good survival. But it's also like, why does the camera need to show us doing this? And why is everyone constantly like losing clothing or wearing very, very thin clothing? Like, in the future, are people just like more sexually active? I mean, I guess maybe, but based on how the fact that we're like 40 years since this movie, 50 years since this movie came out, I don't think, in fact, people are that hornier. I think we're probably about the same amount of horny, and we still wear clothing that has, isn't translucent.
It might have been like a post-sexual revolution kind of.
I was thinking about that because it was hard not to notice, and I apologize for being a male, but it's hard not to notice. But a lot of the women were quite beautiful because they're young, and that's the aesthetic, young, beautiful women. But a lot of them were not wearing bra support, like they were not wearing support for their breasts. So anytime you see them walking, there's just a lot of movement under their shirts because there's no support. So I'm watching, and it's not something that I necessarily like openly noticed and was like, yeah, that girl's not wearing a bra. It's just, I'm a male. It's something that I noticed. I don't think anybody in this movie ever wore any of the females in this movie ever wore a bra. So I wonder if there was like something about, sexual revolution being or informing this film, and like, because I wouldn't say that any of them were ugly, but also the purpose was that they were, young, beautiful people. And I played that up in my pitch. I talked about why that is. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, because I kind of felt like what they were going for was the idea is that this is meant to be some sort of like idealized world for where people are always young.
Yeah.
And so this would be, if you were to imagine kind of what the idealized version of that would be.
Well, what makes young people happy, right? Being physically fit, being physically attractive, having sex,
and being
drugs,
surrounded by
other
physically
hot
attractive people,
right?
Exactly. Where there's no concerns for, where concerns that we would have today around sexuality and sort of any moral implications that society has thrust upon that, you've now thrown that out of
those
equation.
Have been
and what does
eschewed and so that now, and they sort of have that like weird gas thing that they open up, which appears to me to be some kind of like aphrodisiac / recreational drug, which apparently, because the Sandmen are doing it and they're essentially lawmen, are has no repercussions. So there's this idealized like we can drink and have recreational sex and this is like what a young people kind of do. Now it is a basic kind of essentialization of what young people do, because I know lots of young people who are not necessarily interested in sex, or more importantly, not only interested in sex. Like certainly they want to do recreational drugs and have sex, but they're also interested in in their schooling. They're also interested in working with children, and we do see children there. But you know what I mean? Like there's more to it than just that, which I think would be an interesting thing to explore. Like I'm in this utopia where I can do whatever the fuck I want, but I also can pursue my like less baser instincts, my loftier aspirations until I turn 30.
Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah, exactly.
And then you're dead, son. Even the mortality, like we all fear getting older, and we know that there is an expiration date on our body, right? Our human meat sack garbage bone things, these bodies are eventually going to expire. But knowing your expiration date might bring some people peace. It might bring other people anguish. Because
Exactly. Like that's another thing that could have been explored. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in general for me it was sort of those that inner reflection, like how do characters feel about this world? That wasn't there. In general, there was a lot of overacting.
Yes.
And I think when I talk about like plots happened and the characters happened to be there, there's a lot of things that were just these weird obstacles, these moments that they threw in because they were trying to create tension, but they were just kind of laughable. Like, for example, my personal favorite was when they're about to leave and the thing says, "Oh, present your icon" at the door. And they're like taking off her bracelet that's got the little icon on it. And they're like wrestling with it, trying to like pull it back and forth, and then it falls off into this puddle, and then they're reaching around. Like, how deep is this puddle? This puddle, you'd think it's only maybe like a foot deep, and then they like reach their full arm into it, and they're like, "Oh, I can't find it. Oh, wait, don't worry, I have another one in my pocket here. Oh, we're okay." And then as the guy is running after them to catch the door before Francis it closes shut, it's like he totally could have made that.
But then he looks conveniently into the water and reaches in and grabs it. It's like, oh, come on, guys. Yeah. Also, I would be curious to see
moments like that.
I would be curious to see how many of the actors were actually under 30, because I did not believe that Logan was as young as he seemed to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good question. I didn't look into that, but I suspect there's quite a few of them who are probably
because if we watch this show, I think it would be really interesting to make this show and be like only actors under 30.
Yeah,
and make it that way, especially because there's lots of young actors who are in their 20s, but also young actors who are in their teens and early teens, who I think could do a wicked job. Which brings me to Peter Ustinov as the old man. I thought the idea of seeing an old man, for people who've never seen someone over 30, they'd be like, look at this ancient dude, and he's dumb. Like, I know they're trying to play him off as this sort of like sad, crazy old man, but I was like, but why? What's the point? Like, he's just dumb. He doesn't give the plot anything. He doesn't do anything for these characters.
I was totally waiting for him to be like, okay, let me sit you down, kids, and tell you the history of what happened.
Yeah.
Because I'm old and wise and I've had time to read books.
Yeah.
And so I know what happened. I know what's up. None of that. Just like, oh, I named all my cats. I gave them 3 names.
But also, did you notice that he was talking about T.S. Eliot?
Yes. Well, at first I was like, oh, he's talking about Cats, the musical, and then I watched the credits and I went, oh, right, T.S. Eliot.
Yeah, he's talking about T.S. Eliot.
Influenced Cats. Yeah. But yes, I did catch that.
Which was because we've done Cats on the channel before. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting that that he does this whole thing on T.S. Eliot, which means he is well read. It just seemed to be like, okay, but why? What does this give us? What does this do for the plot? This old man shows up, and you're like, whoa, they've never seen an old person, except he is nuts. So the entire impact of this character is lost.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they're like, hey, do you want to leave your home that you've known your whole life?
And he's like, you're going to stay and bury me. And then they're like, psych, nope.
And don't you want to come with us? Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Oh, I think he changes his mind when they say they've never seen cats before. They've never seen cats. Okay, well,
I'm out. What the? It's so dumb. I don't understand.
It's definitely moments like that where you go, because Peter Ustinov, I mean, by that point, he would have been an Academy Award-winning actor,
right?
I mean,
and play.
Wouldn't he have been like, excuse me, I feel like there's a few things here that could be worked out a little bit better. Or maybe he did, and maybe they went, nah.
Or maybe they were just like, maybe it's just the cut of this movie.
Maybe, it'd be interesting if there was if there's an alternative cut available.
Well, you were talking about Blade Runner. Maybe there's like a extended director's exclusive final cut of Logan's run.
To be honest, if I found out there was an extended cut of this movie, actually, I don't know. Maybe I would watch it. I don't know, because I
probably would.
Have very mixed feeling. It's because I'm not gonna. I found it entertaining. Maybe not for the reasons I was supposed to, because I certainly enjoyed the over the top cheesy effects. The scene where they're in the car and you can see the green screen.
Oh,
you can see that it didn't. Part of me was like, wow, that's so bad. But I love that it's on screen.
Oh, it's so good. I love the
and then the miniatures
of this movie.
and the synthesizers. There's some of that stuff, and the set when he's in the control room with those. When he's talking to the computer and there's this weird pink and gold and blue, whatever those are behind him. I don't know what those are.
Yeah.
But it's you go, wow, I don't know what this is. It's kind of dumb, but I love it.
But I love it, yeah. I think we should get into pitches.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything
else to say. How are you feeling about your pitch?
I feel pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think mine's actually not bad.
I'm feeling pretty good about my pitch too. So do you want to go first or would you want me to go first? Up to you.
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like you always go first, and I feel bad about that. But
it's fine. Okay. I don't. Maybe I just lack confidence in my pitches. But I think it's we'll let the audience decide. Not that it's a competition. I just realized I planted that seed. That was not what I intended to do. Yeah, it's not a competition. So essentially, in my version, it's more or less the same setup. I've removed Jenny completely. Or what's her character's name?
Jessica?
Jessica. You know why it's Jenny? Because I remember, okay, just this side note, I remember years ago when I watched it for the first time, I watched it with a friend of mine, and then immediately after we discovered the DVD version we had a commentary track.
Ooh.
And we're like, oh, let's just go. And I'm curious, and it was with the actors. I'm like, I want to know what the actors thought of this.
Yeah.
And so we skimmed through the movie, and we got to the scene with the Arctic scene where he's like, oh, we should take our clothes off so they don't freeze. And all he said was, oh, Jenny, I'd forgotten about this.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was his only comment. So that's why I wrote her down as Jenny.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's the same setup. She's just not in the movie anymore. Sorry.
It's all good. She's not really in the movie in the first place.
Yeah. So in my version, he has these dreams about this place. That's this paradise. And it's this most beautiful place he's ever been. And it's not inside the dome. It's outside the dome. And in his dream, he actually leaves the dome and he goes to this place. Anyway, he has this dream that would basically be what opens up the movie. And then it's him as a Sandman. He's doing his thing. It's essentially the same thing. We see them go to this renewal ceremony. We see him catch a runner. And then he's taken to the computer and asked to find sanctuary. And he's also told not to tell anyone. And it's the same thing in mine. He's like, okay, you're now, to make it so that you can pass, you're now going to, the light on your palm is going to start blinking, which means you've run out of time. And it's essentially more, from that point on, it becomes more of a detective story where it's now him trying to be like, okay, I have this icon. Okay, where do I start? Okay, well, I know the last guy I killed went to get his face changed. Maybe that guy knows something. And so you just go through it systematically, and it's him sort of going and trying and passing himself off as like, no, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
And trying to win trust of people who are runners. Anyway, he learns through this process, he learns how he can escape. And he also is told things like, oh yeah, no one regenerates. He's like, no, that's not true. He's like, no. Like, there's no such thing as renewal. Like, people are destroyed and they create babies, like biologically engineer them. You don't come back to life. So he's sort of like slowly questioning all of these things through the process of figuring out what's going on. And then it's also his friend Francis is now noticing, like, is now starting to ask questions like, hey, what's going on? What's up? Logan basically is like, look, Francis, I got to tell you something. And he tells Francis, like, I don't know if I've been told that this like whole renewal thing doesn't actually happen. And Francis is like, no. Don't. Who have you been hanging out with? Like, this is dangerous. Like, you can't say that out loud. You can't even think these things. You're going to get in so much trouble if you do that. Anyway, eventually Francis is now in a tough position. And Francis is basically like, okay, look, Logan, I have to report you. You're basically, he's like the thought police essentially, and going like, you can't think these things. Even the fact that you're thinking these things means that we have to get you corrected. This is what basically puts Logan now in the position that he has to run, and he's figured out how to escape. And so he goes through the process of trying to escape, and it's the exact same as it is in his dream. And the reason he's able to escape, and I'm surprised the movie didn't really explore this more, but the reason he's able to escape in my version is because he's a Sandman. He knows how to outsmart the Sandman and how to get around them. So he's able to outsmart them. He finds the passage. It's exactly the same as in his dream, and he escapes the city. And in my version, I introduced drones. So as he escapes, there's actually these drones that like now come after him and are basically chasing him
because they don't want drones. Do you mean like the flying drones of our today time, or do you mean
I mean
robots?
I mean like flying drones. Yeah. And I got rid of the whole ice cave thing. So there's some interesting things there. I just was like, it's
too much.
Easier to get rid of it. Yeah, exactly. So he's running, and so now it's essentially him learning how to survive in the wild, but he's able to do it because he's he had these dreams, like he's just remembers certain things that he dreamt about, and he's able to do them, and he's able to survive, and he's able to outsmart these drones. Anyway, eventually so he keeps traveling, and he's traveling, and he's traveling, but he's going like, where is Sanctuary? Like, I'm just in this jungle. Like, I don't, there's nobody around. And eventually he finds his way to an abandoned city. It's not, I haven't sure why it's Washington. But he gets to this abandoned city, and there's nobody there. It looks like people used to live there. But what he finds is it's exactly what he dreamed, but it's like, so he dreamt of this like futuristic city that was beautiful and everything was functioning. It is that city, but it's fallen apart.
Yeah, it's all falling apart.
So he's like, okay, so maybe I found it. Anyway, now that he's there, now it's sort of him just surviving in this abandoned city. And then it's this long sequence of him kind of slowly going crazy. And he starts talking to himself. And now he starts having conversations with himself about like, yeah, they lied to me. Why did they lie to me? Like, why? Like, there's a world outside the dome. Anyway, eventually, Francis finds him. And Francis is like, Logan, like, if you come back with me, we can set this all right, okay? I know I talked to the computer, and the computer told me that you were sent on a mission to go find Sanctuary, and you were to disguise yourself as a runner. Like, we come back with me, and we can make this all right. But Logan refuses. He's like, no, I don't want to go back. And Logan starts trying to convince Francis, like, no, we can't, like, I can't go back, and because I can't go back to the way my life was. I know that there's more out here. I can't go back to being a Sandman and killing people who are just trying to escape. Like, what? Okay, sure, they're running away to nothing, but why do we keep them in there? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, eventually, like, Francis goes, okay, you're not going to play along. He summons the drones, and they capture Logan, and they take him back. So, and now it's the scene, you know, which was in the original movie where he's sitting down. There is no sanctuary.
Yeah.
But in my version, it's basically, you know, the computer asks him, like, did you find Sanctuary? And he goes, I just found it in an abandoned city. There was nobody there. It was just me. And the computer basically says, okay, you're like, take him away. And he's basically thrown into prison. And so he's in this cell, and they keep saying, he's sort of under the impression of like, okay, are they going to let me go? Like, what's going to happen? And there's a doctor that comes in and visits him and says, okay, Logan, so we're going to have to perform some tests on you. But don't worry, they're not going to hurt. It'll be all over soon enough. So they take him away, they perform some tests on him. And then like a day later, he wakes up again, and he's back in the cell. And the doctor comes back, and the doctor's now asking him, and he's going through his like logs and saying, yeah, I have here saying you reported like having these dreams. Like, tell me more about these dreams that you were having. And so Logan tells him about the dream that he had and how he dreamt of finding this place. Well, that's what he thought Sanctuary was, but he got there, but it wasn't actually there. And basically, the doctor says, well, okay, Logan, this is very interesting. We've never had an instance of a Sandman having dreams like this before. And basically what the doctor says is, all the people who are runners, what they found in all of their cases, every single one, they always had dreams. They always had this dream of a place outside the dome. And so basically the doctor says, and so Logan, what we're going to try and do is you're going to help us try and cure people of these dreams. And it slowly dawns on Logan that what they're going to do is use him as a test, basically a lab rat, so they can operate on him and figure out how they can get people to stop having these dreams. And he basically finds out that like, he asks if like, he basically is like, so are people regenerated? The doctor's like, no, there's no such thing as regeneration. Or actually, no, sorry. The doctor says that they do. People do regenerate, but it's insincere enough that Logan's like,
oh, it doesn't happen.
Logan's, yeah. Anyway, so basically it ends with Logan basically being kept and experimented on. And then it sort of leaves him, and then it goes off to the doctor basically goes off to Francis, and the doctor is conversing with Francis and is like, yeah, I'm sorry, Francis, but there's nothing we could do to help your friend. And he starts asking him questions about like, well, tell me about like when you found Logan, like what was going on. And then he says, "Oh, by the way, there was this icon that, like, in my version, I was going to incorporate that same icon.
Yeah.
Look, he had this icon that he used to escape. Did you find it?" And Francis goes, "No, I never saw it. I don't know what you're talking about." And so now we follow Francis, and it's Francis. He goes back to his regular life. He goes back to the city. He goes back to his job. And now he's sort of like, there's something off about him. He seems like he's looking at his environment differently. And there's a scene, it'd be like the final scene of the movie. He's like at his desk and people are like, "Oh, we're going home." He's like, "Oh, it's okay. I'll stay here. I'm just going to be here late tonight." And they all kind of give him a weird look as they're leaving, but they leave him.
Yeah.
And then it's Francis alone in the office, and he pulls out the little icon that Logan had used to escape. And so he kept the icon. And that's where the movie would end.
So where do the dreams come from?
So the dreams, well, it's sort of left unexplained, but the idea is that it's like some people started having these dreams. The idea is it's the society just wants to keep people from actually thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
And so it's going to try and destroy their dreams. I did at one point have this idea where the other way I was thinking of going with it was the dreams were actually given to Logan by the computer.
Ooh.
Because it was going to set Logan up to go be a runner to escape. And so that was another thing I was thinking of doing with it at one point.
I wanted to be clear that you had an idea for the dreams, which clearly you were like, let's leave it up to the audience's interpretation. That's fine too. I was just like, where were they coming from? Because that's what I wanted to know. No, that was good. I like that you you very much leaned into this Blade Runner thing where it's like a detective story. But and then not much changes. It just sort of follows Logan a little more closely, and he's a bit more introspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't actually,
and I felt like
go on.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I was gonna say I brought the dreams thing in because I felt like what was missing was there needed to be some sense already that there was something that was putting him at odds with the world around him. Like there was something that he needed to discover for himself. And it wasn't like, because I think sometimes with movies where there's a discovery, the character already has to be in a place where they're willing,
otherwise the discovery just becomes rejected.
Exactly. Yeah. Either it becomes rejected or the discovery, the problem can be whatever sort of reversal there is doesn't have reason to sink in. And so there's no, like, the character doesn't then have grounds to question everything. I mean, there are certain cases where it's like, it can be a case where it's like, oh, a character believes something and then they receive something earth shattering and now they have to reevaluate everything. But I feel like it's more effective usually. Like if you think of the Matrix, Neo already knows something's not off.
Yeah. And it becomes more believable because he follows that breadcrumb trail back until he's like, wow, I'm at this point where, as Morpheus says, you see just how far down this rabbit hole goes. But that implies that he's already partway down.
Exactly. But I think it's because it gives the character, like, then when they're set off on their mission to begin with, there's something that they're trying to learn for themselves. It's not just, oh, I'm doing this because I was told. It's also, no, there's something like, now this thing that I've always wanted to know, now this might give me the answer.
Yeah. All right, I think you'll like mine because I did some neat things, but I think you'll enjoy my my pitch. But I'm gonna get into mine, so I'm gonna sneeze in a second. I can feel it.
Zoom type.
All right, so on my version of the city, we begin with the city it's just this city outside, and it's just called the city because it doesn't appear to have a name, and nobody knows that there's anything outside of the city. So it's just a city, and we're introduced to Logan and Francis of the current generation, and their job as Sandman to make sure no one runs when they turn 30. However, the biggest difference in my version is that there's a ruling council, not a robot. There's a ruling council of however many people that govern the city, but just like everyone else, when they turn 30, they like leave, and carousel is also a thing where they can become part of the renewal ceremony. But the council also gets shifted. So in the city, they're told, like, all you have to do in the city is you have to work hard, but once you're done your job, 8 hours or whatever, you are free to do whatever you want. And the city is like a utopia that way. So they work really hard, but you can pursue education, you can have recreational sex. There's no STDs. People aren't allowed to get pregnant, so that's not an issue. There's no Like you can fall in love, you can do alcohol, you can do whatever you want. You just have to work hard during it's your time. So it's this utopia kind of that way. And when, of course, once you reach 30, you can either try your hand at renewal or you can choose to pass on, but you have to die. So they're doing another carousel, another renewal ceremony. And one of the council, before the ceremony begins, one of the council steps down and a new person takes their place on the council to show that there also must be new governing. Like they're not better than other people. So when a runner is, like just as during carousel, a runner is attempting to make a break for it. And Logan is the one who gets called in and he captures him and he tells him, you can turn yourself in and you can try renewal or you can die. And the runner's like, that's not a choice. Like it's basically die or die. And Logan's like, what are you talking about? There's renewal. There's always a chance. And the runner's like, no, man, have you ever seen someone get renewed? And Logan's like, well, no, I guess I haven't. But before you can ask any more questions, Francis shows up and blasts the runner, unintentionally ruining Logan's train of thought. Logan collects the runner's belongings, and then he clocks out, which means he doesn't have to bring the runner's belongings till the next day. So he enjoys the recreations of being a young person in the city, and he winds up having sex with a young woman named Jessica, and the two of them, they just enjoy casual sex together, but he sees her wearing a similar symbol, similar to the one that the runner has, and he asks her about it, and she's just sort of cryptic and vague, and then after they, finish copulating, they go their separate ways, because that's what you do when you have casual sex. So when he reports for duty and gives the items, it's to a computer, but it's not like the computer. It's just to a computer terminal. The computer alerts the council, and Logan is basically told to stand before them. And they're like, okay, so there's a bunch of runners that are unaccounted for. And this symbol has something to do with it. They call it Sanctuary, and apparently it's outside the city. We want you to pose as a runner and go after them, but you can't tell anyone. And he's like, okay, I can do that. They're like, it's a special mission. You'll have to be careful, but this is what we want you to do. Investigate it. So Logan's like, okay. He uses his influence and like his office to contact Jessica because he saw the same symbol. And it basically starts questioning her and like, slowly he does everything he can to gain her trust. She reveals that she heard that in Sanctuary, this place outside the city, people are allowed to grow older than 30 and they're allowed to have children. And she's like, I want a baby. I have this biological need that I really want to have a child. But I don't just want to be a birth mother. I want to be I don't just want to be someone who gives birth the way we do biologically here and then done. I want to be, or maybe they just give their eggs and then it's just like seeded that way. That could be fine too. But she's like, I don't just want to give my biology. I want to be a mother. And that's why I want to that's what led her to what she calls the believers, the people who think that Sanctuary is out there. So the believers, he meets them, and they don't trust Logan at all. So in order to convince them, he's like, look, I'll change my face. I'll do whatever I can so no one recognizes me, and then I'm going to run. But you guys have to help me. So he changes his face and goes to the converter. But what he doesn't know is that Francis has been following him and doesn't know that he has a secret mission. And so Logan goes to get his face changed, and Francis shows up and basically tries to kill him because he's like, I know you're a runner, you're a traitor to the Sandman. And he doesn't succeed. And what this means is now that the believers have seen Francis try to kill Logan, they're like, oh, okay, no other Sandman would try to kill a Sandman if he wasn't actually a runner. So they believe him now. So the believers take him to meet a man who is 36 years old. And he calls himself the Watcher. He's never been caught. He lives in the beneath the city. He's never been caught. And he says it's his responsibility to stay behind and in hiding and tell others about Sanctuary so they can get out of the city and find real happiness the way people were supposed to live. And that the ceremony of renewal is just a hoax that's made to give people false hope so they can be remade when all they do is die anyway. So the Watcher tells Jessica and Logan to find the way out, and he gives them a piece of paper. He says, this will help you find Sanctuary. And they follow his instructions, and they leave, and they're on their way out these tunnels, which is this whole water filtration system. And as they leave, once they leave, they've gone, Francis shows up, and he kills the Watcher and all the believers that are left behind. Basically wipes them all out. But Jessica and Logan manage to make it out through this water filtration city, and they wind up miles and miles away from the city. They can't even see the city. They're miles away from it. And no one really, to their knowledge, has ever been outside the city. So they're like, man, we don't even know what the city looks like from this far away. It's crazy. But they open up the piece of paper that the Watcher gave them, and it's this magnificent structure of a statue with some words written in an old language. And we know that it says sanctuary because we can read English, but they don't.
Okay,
right?
But they can. Oh, interesting. Okay.
They can read, but it's just not English.
Okay.
But we, the audience, see the words saying sanctuary. So they follow the directions that are given to them by the Watcher, and they're like, I wonder what this piece of paper will be for. And they keep going, and they don't know they're followed by Francis, and eventually they find a settlement. And this all happens during a day, and the outside world is like wild and deadly, and they have no idea what they're doing there. And there's basically this huge settlement of all the runners, a lot of whom are older than 30, and they're all searching for sanctuary. None of them have found it. And Logan is like, well, let's look at this image on the paper. Does anyone else have them? And they're like, no. But he's like, I think it's some kind of indicator because the Watcher found it and gave it to us. And he opens it up, and somebody's like, I think I've seen that statue before, but it's a long way from here. So Logan decides he's going to go find the statue, and Jessica is basically now in love with him. Logan's like, I think like I really want to find like sanctuary and actually like live peacefully. And he's been talking with Jessica this whole time, and she's like, I want to have a child. Like, I think, and Logan's like, yeah, we'll totally have a child together and it'll be great. This is what we're going to do. So she's like, I'm going to go with you and you're going to be the father of my child. And he's like, cool.
Right. But it's developed a little bit more naturally this way. So they've gotten to know each other.
So Francis has found them, but he sees there's way too many runners. Like I'm talking a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 of runners that are in this settlement. No, maybe not that many, but a lot. And he's like, I can't take them all at once. It's just, so he's like, I'm going to bide my time and I'm going to pick them off one by one as they travel. So now all of a sudden, as they're traveling, their numbers are dwindling, and they're searching for food in this foreign, barren landscape, and it's hard living and it's hard moving. And Logan's like, is this just what it's like outside? It's hard to do. And at one point during the journey, Logan is alone, and we see Francis with a gun, but he's hidden, and it looks like he's going to kill Logan. But instead, there's a moment where he's like, this is Logan. And he makes some noise and directs, without being detected, directs Logan to where some food is. So we're seeing Francis start to make a bit of a change now. He's having...
Right.
So eventually they find the statue that's on this poster. And it turns out it's at the gate to a giant dome structure, a huge dome structure. And Logan is like, sanctuary must be inside this dome structure. It's huge, it's massive. Like, this must be sanctuary. And so he's like, I'm going to go inside this dome. And it turns out it's actually just the city that they left. And the council shows up and is like, oh, you did a great job finding everyone. And Logan reveals to Jessica that he was actually working for the council the whole time and he never had a change of heart. He was just leading her on. And telling her that he was like, he was just leading her on. And what's more is that Francis knew and was trying to keep Logan alive so that he could bring all the runners back to the city. And the poster was actually just an old bit of propaganda from before the war that had taken place outside the city that had destroyed everything to try and get people to come to the city. So it was just like an advertisement for propaganda. So the council basically created the city after the war, and they just and basically we came up with a system where they were like, we can give it. People don't want to work in harsh conditions for the greater good. They want to work for self-satisfaction. So if you work hard for 8 hours, then for the rest of the time you can have sex, drugs, alcohol, whatever you want, right? But you got to work hard for it. Mm-hmm. And then you can satisfy your whatever needs you want. And we found that this was the best way to motivate people. But we also found that after 30, the body starts to decay and it becomes a liability. And there's only so many resources in the world. So we were like, unfortunately, we can't have that drain on society. So we started killing people off at 30. Yeah. But that's the system that works. It's basically like we exploit people for labor, and then they work and they can do whatever they want for 30 years, be, pleasurable sex, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is you want for 30 years. And it's basically like we created a utopia for people because it's a lot easier than living outside. Like, and Logan's like, we were outside. We saw how hard it was to live outside and try to survive as a community. You guys, some of you have been doing it for years, and it was hard fucking work. And they were like, yeah, but we were free. And it was like, yeah, but you were free in here too. And you got to have like risk-free sex and do everything. Yeah. So really, like, what are we trading up? And so a lot of people are like, okay, I get this, and they agree to like die or go back to the city, and then they get so. Basically, the city goes back to and the council also reveals that they've been doing this. They're like, we do this every couple of decades. We start releasing information about Sanctuary to remind people how hard it is to live outside and why the city works so well. So it's all been a ploy. So then everything goes back to normal, and Logan and Francis go back to being Sandman. But then something bothers Logan. He's like, hey, and it sort of mirrors the beginning of the movie again. He's like, hey, Francis, kind of bothered me that some of the council were saying they remembered doing this decades earlier. Isn't that kind of weird? And Francis is like, yeah, they probably have like books or written down telling them how to do it. And he's like, yeah, but then they wouldn't say remember. And he's like, Logan, you're thinking too hard about this again. And Logan's like, okay. So he starts doing a little bit of research again. And what he discovers is that the council is actually made up of old people who keep renewing their faces.
Right.
In order to exploit the rest of the... So they're actually like way older than 30 and keep renewing their faces and their bodies in order to like exploit the labor of other people. And Logan is like, yeah, this isn't right. But also like they're kind of right about how the city is run and how like we have this amazing life until we're 30 and we get to do whatever we want. And it was really hard to live outside. So he basically says nothing and the city carries on the way it is. And that's the end.
Ooh, I like that. That's really good.
It's basically like this terrible Marxist like capitalist utopia, but it's at the same time it's like if they can control how many resources there are, and sure, people aren't free, they don't get to have children or stuff like that, but it's also like now instead people can just like they can live a self-serving life as long as they show up for work and work hard. It's like, that's just capitalism to the nth degree.
Yeah.
But living on your own outside is fucking hard. So, I don't know. It's sort of this bleak outlook on everything is controlled by the system. It's just the Matrix, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we both went that way. But I like what you did. I like how Logan appears to have some transformation, and then you get to the end and he's like, no, I was putting on.
Yeah, and I wanted to leave that up to the audience where like it appears like as we're watching, it appears like, oh, maybe he's changing his mind. And when Francis even has that moment where he's like helping Logan, it looks like to the audience like maybe Francis is coming around, like now that Logan has come around. But then it turns out that all Francis was doing was trying to keep Logan alive. Like that was his job.
It was all a ploy. Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. That's very good.
Yeah. I mean, I had a lot of fun with this. I don't actually know that I would do my pitch over like a remake of the original. I do think like a remake that focuses in on the aspects of the original movie would be really, really good.
Well, I'm actually thinking about picking up. I'm just curious what the novel is like.
Yeah, maybe we should read the novel.
Maybe you should, yeah. That'd be fun. That'd be fun to do.
But until then, any last minute thoughts about Logan's Run?
You know what? This was my second time watching it, and it was kind of fun to revisit it.
I like this movie a lot. I mean, it was a little long and kind of dumb in terms of story, but I liked it. For me, the second half gets a little slower when they meet the old man. It meanders a bit.
I think so too.
But everything while they're in the city and when they're leaving the city, I was like, this is fun. This is cool.
You know what I think kept me hooked was they'd always introduce something. You'd go, "Oh wow, that's interesting. Where's this going?" And they wouldn't explore it. But then they just introduce something new, and you'd be like, "Oh wow, this is interesting." Like be like the robot in that cave, right? You're like, "Wow, this is interesting.
Where is this
wow, these are people.
Yeah.
Where's this? Oh no, okay,
we're on. It's like it doesn't. It has so many ideas, but it doesn't love any of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Where can people find you?
My website, www.nathanieldraper.com or letterboxed at DraperNate.
You can check out my band Robot Philosopher. We released a single earlier this month the video was done by Nate himself. It's called Cosmic Orphan. You can check it out on our YouTube channel. But you can also wait for the album to drop on all the streaming services. It's called Astral Migration. It's on every streaming service. With my band is called Robot Philosopher. Check that out. You can also check out our other channel, the CineMasters, for more scripted content. And thank you so much for hanging out here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you'll never miss another episode of CineCasters or the classic episodes which are being re-uploaded. But yeah, that was Logan's Run. Thanks for watching.
Listening. Thanks for listening.
Peace.